Welcome to the Toca Backstage Podcast. Join Toca's Executive Director, Chris Wolf, in conversations with the artists and people behind the scenes of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation's performances and events.
Hi, this is Chris Wolf, the Executive Director of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation. Welcome to another edition of Toca Backstage. Recently, it was my honor to speak with Jon Armstrong, a world-class award-winning magician, who we will be presenting a virtual magic show on Saturday, July 25th at 7 p.m. It's truly going to be an amazing event. You won't want to miss it. It's being presented through Zoom, so you know that what's happening in front of your eyes is actually happening and Jon is actually doing it. We've actually worked with Jon a couple of times on some special events, a gala, a murder mystery dinner, and now it's actually just going to be Jon in front of a camera, streamed live right into your living room. So I urge you to get your tickets early. It's only $25. Again, it's Saturday, July 25th, 7 p.m. You don't even have to get dressed up to go out, but you can grab a drink, grab a deck of cards, because he'll be doing some interactive stuff with you. So it'll be just truly amazing. I urge you to get your tickets on Eventbrite. You can go to our website or our Facebook page and click on the link that's provided with this information. Get your tickets Sunday, July 25th, 7 p.m. We look forward to seeing you soon back in the theater when we go actually present live performances. But until then, we're going to be coming straight to your living room. We hope you enjoy the show. And here's my conversation with Jon. So Jon, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. We're really excited about the show coming up on July 25th online. I was going to say at the theater.
I know, right? It's so weird to say that. Isn't it strange?
It is. You know, it's sort of a good thing, bad thing, because it used to be my audience was just Torrance in the South Bay, some outside that area. I mean, we've had people come in from Santa Barbara and San Diego, but now it could theoretically be international, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So you are an extremely well-respected magician, and you've been doing it for a while. I always have to find out, how did you get into the art?
So I grew up in Orlando, Florida, cultural center of the world, land of opportunity, if you're a roller coaster. And as you probably guess, I grew up in a theme park. And the theme of that park was trailer. And so, yeah. So anyway, I grew up around Disney World and all the different theme parks, and everyone associates Disney with Orlando, but there's far more other parks: the Universal parks, the SeaWorld parks at the time, the Busch Garden parks, a park called Boardwalk and Baseball, which was a weird park that's no longer there. And so there was always after you've ridden the Haunted Mansion a gajillion times, though that fascinated me about trying to figure out how the effects worked. You start realizing, if you're going to the parks all the time, there's other things to do, like the acts that were performing as, you know, either street performers or stage performers or whatever. And I saw my first magician at a place called Boardwalk and Baseball. I think it was actually Circus World at the time, which is another weird park. And I saw him do big stage illusions, and I went, "That's amazing! I want to do that." And then I saw a guy at SeaWorld later on do a show that had more like manipulation type stuff, you know, like the actual sort of, you know, this type of, you know, pulling cards out of the air and actually doing sleight of hand. And I saw that and I went, "I want to do that." And I started going to that show and just over and over again, talking to that guy afterwards. And I finally realized the kid was going to keep bothering him unless he taught him something. So he taught me a couple things, and then he introduced me to a bunch of books, and then sort of sent me on my way. And so I was reading books and really into it. And then I was about 14 when at the Disney Studios park, which is, I think now, at that time it was called the Disney MGM Studios. And I saw a guy with a deck of cards and some coins just floor a group of people who were no further away from me than I was from him. Like this, basically just like close distance. And I went, "I'm going to do that. That's what I want to do. None of the stage stuff. I want to do that." And that really where my love of magic sort of cemented. And I was very fortunate that once again, that man was nice enough to start talking to me, giving me some ideas, sending me on my way. But unlike the first gentleman, this man named Terry Ward, who still performs at Walt Disney World to this day, who still has done 5 shows a day, 5 days a week for the last 31 years. And he became my mentor. He started teaching me. I took magic classes with him, and he became a real mentor, like a real guide through magic. He was introducing me to magicians that had skills that he necessarily didn't have, because as you know, magic is a varied art. It's not just about one thing, it's about lots of different things. And so, if you want to learn about mentalism, talk to this guy. And if you want to learn about, really hardcore card sleight, talk to this guy, And the best thing about Terry is that he was able to then take all of the stuff that I was learning from all these other sources, whether it be books or other performers or whoever, and then say, okay, how are you going to make that entertaining? What's going to be good about that? Let's work on your voice. Let's work on your diction. Where's your standing? So on and so forth. Because he had a theater background. He had a BA in theater. And so he really cared about all that. And so I was very lucky. And so at the same time that he was telling me to learn magic from these points, he was also saying, all right, now you need to go take a speech class. I'm not interested in teaching you more unless you really work on your delivery. You really need working on improv. You need to work on improv. So go take some improv classes. He was really pointing me in the directions I needed to go. So because of him, and probably the 4 years I spent through high school with him, and then also getting very involved with my theater department at my high school, I was thespian president, Troop 690. Thank you very much. I was very, very, yeah. And so I got very involved with that. Never wanted to be an actor, very clearly. I have a huge amount of respect, obviously, for that profession and all the different variations of it. But it never was what I wanted to do. I always wanted to just be a performer. So I was taking the acting craft and placing it in a different sort of model. And so about 4 years of doing that, I went to I went to try to go to college for theater, and that didn't work out because I was lazy and I didn't go to class. And I went to the theater classes, never went to the other classes that I hear you have to do. You have to go to these English classes, these math classes. I hated it. So I didn't do that. And then eventually I was very lucky. When I was 20 years old, I got my first show, my first professional. I was always performing. I was doing birthday parties, and I worked as a restaurant magician where you'd go around to the tables and do magic for people at Sunday brunches and things. So I did that. My first real gig is that I worked at, I was 20 and I got my show at Epcot, and I did it for 5 years. And so the 5 years that I spent at Disney was my graduate degree. So because my mentor was basically the big magician on campus, for lack of a better term. So he was the one who was doing a lot of different things all over the park. So he had his show that he did at the Studios Park. I had my show that did 2 or 3 days a week at Epcot. And then there was other opportunities for variety entertainers at the different parts of the park in different areas, corporate events, and the Diamond Horseshoe, which is the Orlando equivalent of the Golden Horseshoe as we have here, and all that stuff. And so I would sub into those shows. So I was learning doing stage magic again. And then I was having to do street magic, like actual street busking type magic, as a, outside in different venues that they would have me. And I played a Wild West gambler, character at certain points. And I did a thing where we did a seance at the Haunted Mansion and for corporate events. And so I was learning and doing all of this magic all at the same time, and learning from other variety performers of all different disciplines, and lessons that I still learn to this day, lessons that I am now passing on to the students that I learned from guys who were singing cowboys and, clowns that would get into balloons and, other ridiculous things that have not necessarily anything to do with magic, but I learned a lot from their performance technique and what they could bring to an audience. And so to answer your question in probably the longest form I possibly could have, that's where it all started from. And then from there on out, after I left Disney and I moved to Las Vegas, and I did a show in Las Vegas, and I moved out. I've been in the Los Angeles area now for the last 20 years. That's where I started. That's why I am as good as I am, because I much like Terry did 5 shows a day, 5 days a week, I was working 6, 7 days a week. And there were days where I would spend the morning doing the Diamond Horseshoe, doing 5 shows to 6 shows at the Diamond Horseshoe, get in my car, run from one park to the other park, go to Epcot, do 5 sets at Epcot, doing the character show that I did there, doing magic. And then I would do a corporate event after that. So there were days where I was doing magic 12 hours a day,
Wow.
just constantly. And it started a work ethic that I still have to this day, even in this strange COVID time. So I have to perform, like it's just in my blood. It's just how I do it. So when I had to pivot to this, I was very receptive into trying to learn as much as I possibly could about this new medium, to try to make it as entertaining as possible, and to give people this as best of the experience as they possibly could have if they were to see me live, to make it as interesting and as good as any live show.
Well, I have to say, I'm sure there are people who will find out about this show and say, I don't know, a magician online, how good could that be? But I watched a clip that I think you may have posted on social media, or somebody did, that was, and it was obviously not a plan. It was like you were doing some kid's birthday party or something.
Yeah.
And I being like having a little bit of background in magic myself, I couldn't even begin to figure out what you did, how you did it. But and you could tell by the look on the people's faces that they were just like, and it was the kid that you were doing it for obviously had some sort of background in magic, the way he was handling a deck of cards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was just blown away. So I urge you, if anyone listening or watching this, that if you are hesitant, this man will blow you away.
I will try. I'll do my best.
Well, and for those who don't know, some people in Torrance may recognize you from your brief stint in our murder mystery dinner that we did for magic.
Yeah, that was so fun. Still friends with a lot of those guys.
You also did one of our galas, I think.
I did. Did some walk around at a gala that you guys did. Chipper was on the show as well, I believe.
So people who don't think they know you, they will know you from those things. And I have to commend you that your journey through magic took you through so many different, like you took voice classes and all that other stuff. Do you think that that's something that's missing from some performers, that they focus so much on maybe the presentation of the trick as opposed to the overall presentation?
The simple answer is yes. I think I'm of the opinion, and this is something that I've talked about in my lectures to magicians, is there's a school of thought that performance and presentation is more important than the magic itself. And then there's a school of thought that the magic is more important than anything, and that the magic has to be strongest, and that's the first thing. And I'm of the school of thought that if both have to be equally as impressive, and both have to be very strong. And on one side, it is my opinion that if you only care about the presentation, if the show is just about how many laughs you can get and how many moments of drama you can put into something, whatever, if the magic takes like a second, the back seat, or even like, is in the trunk, then you're not doing magic, you're doing performance art. And that's fine. That's not magic. Magic should be strong, and magic to me, is the unwilling sort of release to the impossible. It's not the willing suspension of disbelief, which is the theater term. It's not the willing suspension of disbelief. It's the unwilling surrender to the impossible, meaning that, like, I don't know how this works. This is amazing. There's, and you're not having to pretend like you don't know how it works to enjoy it. You just won't know how it works. And not only will you not know how it works, you will believe it's impossible. You will believe what the person is doing is completely impossible. So that kind of strength of magic needs to be there. But if you don't wrap that in something that feels engaging and personal and has a story and has some kind of meaning in it other than just look what I can do, immediately animosity sets in, and you have this thing of like, well, I mean, if I knew how to do that, then then I could do the trick too. If I had the box, I could do it. And that's a big stepping point. So presentation to me is the way to take something that is impossible, that seems like it's going to be like that no one would be able to figure out, and let that be as palatable and as entertaining and as engaging as possible. So that way you're not bumping up against anything. Because I could show you dozens of comedy magicians who are neither, who are basically, they're doing weak jokes, and weak magic, and they put it together and it becomes passable. And I can show you guys who are the best sleight of hand people in the world. And I stopped saying, notice I didn't say performers, sleight of hand people in the world, because they understand sleight of hand on a different level. And some of them aren't performers. Like probably the greatest sleight of hand practitioner of any generation, probably for the last 100 years, is a guy named Steve Forte, who is a gambling expert, but he can do anything with a deck of cards. He can do anything with dice. It's insane how good his hands are. But he'd be the first person to tell you that he's no performer. He doesn't like performing. He just knows the moves. And there's a lot of guys who are basically just a couple steps above that, where they have incredible chops, but they can't really connect to people. They don't look people in the eye. They're not really engaging with them in any sort of way. And all they're doing is, look, I can do this and you can't. And that's no one wants that. No one wants to feel that. Yeah. So you have to do both. And I have put so much effort into both, so that at the same time that I'm doing something completely fooling and that is amazing and seems impossible, I'm doing something so absurd and so bizarre and so hilarious that no one seems to care that their minds are being racked. They don't look at me as a bad guy. We're having a journey together at that same time. And that's kind of what I've always done with magic. And I was very lucky, like I said, to see magic from both sides from a very early age, from the highly technical guys, because there were super highly technical guys in Orlando, and from the performance side of things, where it's just performance, and realizing that I needed to take the best of both worlds and put them together.
Well, and it's, you really sort of hit sort of my complaint about some magicians, whereas you take somebody who maybe has the big props and gets the gigs on stage, but you would think they would have maybe taken one dance lesson because they're dancing around the boxes, and it's like, no, that's. But then you get people like you and some other people that you hand them a deck of cards and they will entertain you for hours on end with just a deck of cards. To me, that is truly an art, and you are obviously one of the masters of that art.
Well,
although you do, from what I understand, you do have a prop that is very helpful in your act, which is a little tiny plunger. I
do. I have a plunger. I did that on Penn and Teller's Fool Us. That was still their favorite card trick, if you ask them, which is great. And yeah, I'll definitely do that in this show. You get to see that live. And I've been able to come up with really cool, fun ways to make that even more engaging and interactive. So if you saw it on TV, you're going to have the opportunity maybe to be able to actually follow along, do stuff with your own deck of cards, and have the magic happen to you right there in your own homes.
So that, to me, that's obviously, to see you or some of these other people live in person is one thing. To see you online is going to be a whole different thing. Would you suggest people have like a deck of cards ready for, or any?
Sure. I think if you have things around your house, like a deck of cards, here's the thing. I'm hoping we have a very large turnout for this and that we have a really big crowd. I will not be able to work with everybody, but there will be groups of people in the show that I'll be able to borrow a deck of cards from, virtually borrow a deck of cards from, and have them do stuff and shuffle cards. And we're going to be able to do a really cool trick together with each other, and that's going to be super fun. And there's going to be other people who, if you have just your good old-fashioned cell phone, so that you have your Zoom device is your computer or whatever else you're using, and then you have a cell phone handy, I'll be able to do some magic with people like that. And actually, there's one trick in the show where everybody if they have one, will bring out their cell phone and we will use them. So there's, and then also if anyone just happens to have a pair of dice, like you would get a Monopoly, just a regular old 6-sided dice that you find in most board games like Yahtzee or whatever, someone should bring one of those along. And we're going to hopefully use all these items and create some really cool magic that happens in your home. You know, to me, there's like a degrees of participation for this. And obviously watching me just pull coins out of the air or whatever, that's very passive. And my goal is to try to make the magic as interactive as possible, because what we're craving now more than anything else is interaction, interpersonal connection. We're missing so much of that because of everything that's going on. And my job and my goal in the show is to make this as tactile and as interesting and as engaging physically as it is just mentally and visually.
It's going to be a blast, and I can't wait for people to tune in. I also want to comment that I'm noticing you're wearing Avengers wear. And that kind of goes back to, I know that you have a love for comics, but you also were involved in creating one. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. I myself, a writer by the name of Mike Costa, who is a supervising producer on the show Lucifer. If you've ever seen the show Lucifer, I think it was originally on the CW, or maybe it was Fox. I think it was Fox, and then now it's on Netflix, and it's in its 6th season now. Mike Costa and a gentleman by the name of Ryan Brown, who's this amazing artist who has been working on tons of different things for all different people, Marvel, but also independent comics like Image Comics and things like that. And we came up with this concept we called Smoke and Mirrors. And it was essentially a story about a magician like myself, a performer, who gets transposed into a world that is where people actually do magic all the time and don't even think about it, where magic is technology. So take out the magic that is the box that we're using right now to communicate and put in actual magic. And because he's a magician, and because that world never had fake magic, because it always had magic and everybody just used magic all the time. He's the first person to ever do fake magic. And because he's doing fake magic, they think he's this great impossible wizard. So sort of a Wizard of Oz-esque thing. And he has to basically hopefully contain his secrets so that he's able to pass off the fact that he's this wizard, even though he's doing magic tricks. And it's basically an inverse of the most common trope there is in magic, sort of when magicians are used in fiction, which is a person with real magic powers passing themselves off as a stage illusionist, a fake magician. And here we're doing the inverse. Everybody can do magic, and this guy is passing himself as a great wizard, but he's just a stage illusionist. And so that was the main concept. And one of the cool things that we did with the book is that as you read the book, there was magic in the book, meaning that like certain things would happen as you read it. You would look at a card, and then you would turn to the next page, and that card would be missing in the next page. We would do things where you would you put your finger on a panel and you would move it around, and then you would land on the panel, and then the next page predicted which panel you would be on. So we had like cool interactive magic in a basic 2D print format, no digital thing whatsoever. And it was super cool. And we got to do that with a big comic publisher called IDW, which is like basically it's like Marvel, DC, IDW. That's the ranking order there. And IDW is this the company that they've done things like, stuff you might have heard of, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Transformers and G.I. Joe. You might have heard of them. And so that's where this company does. And they bought our concept, and we did it for a while. We did it for 6 issues, and it was super fun. We have jokingly decided that was the end. The story was the end, but we have an idea of where it would go if we decided to ever do more of it. And the concept was very popular. Magicians loved it. It was on most comic critics' top 10 lists for that year. Like it was like usually 9 or 10, but still it was on the top 10 list of most things, because people thought it was not only an engaging story, because Mike is an amazing writer, and me and him came up with the main story and the main beats together, and then he actually wrote it. And then the magic element, and then I guess Ryan's art was just incredible. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was something I did many years ago, but I'm very proud of it.
Is it still available somewhere around?
Yeah, you could totally just buy it at like at a at a bar. I mean, are those open now? I don't think they're open now. But Barnes and Noble, or just find online, Amazon or whatever. So.
And what ever thought about like the movie treatment or?
Oh, we've talked about that again, and there was actually at one time, I think the NDA has expired on that. At one time there was genuine interest from a genuine large company that everybody knows, and we had meetings, and then just things go into the ether. But yeah, we talked about doing it, and there was at one time. There was this really big Hollywood buying of like anything related to magic, like right around the same time The Prestige and all those kind of movies came out. And so then so everyone was talking about magic things, and this is one of the properties they were talking about, and then it just didn't go anywhere. So.
Well, you're probably too young to remember Bill Bixby's The Magician.
I didn't watch it in the original series, but no, I've seen them all. Of course, I mean, he lived in the Magic Castle and the whole thing, and yeah, that's a great. And then and Mark Wilson, the great Mark Wilson, the television sort of pioneer, he was the one who was the magic consultant for the show, and
yeah, I remember.
And that was great. Yeah, no, I did. I can't say I loved the show in its day, but I now definitely appreciate the show after seeing it, on the DVD treatments that I've seen.
So obviously you're a man of many talents: comic book writer, magician, performer, actor. Although you claim not to be, you did a great job at that murder mystery, I thought.
Well, thank you. I get to play. I have this much of a range. That's my range. And if you get a character right in that range, I'm okay.
We killed it. What are your plans? I mean, obviously, like us, you're hoping that eventually things will get back to pseudo normal, where people can convene again. What are your plans now? I mean, is it just everything online? Are you in the midst of planning some new thing for the future?
Mostly what I'm doing are the online shows, and I'm doing those as private events, and then obviously these public shows, which are different shows. I mean, I definitely, I have multiple different variations on the show, so that if you were to see me at a public event and then hire me for a private event, you wouldn't just be seeing the exact same show.
Right.
Definitely highlights. I mean, people always want me to do the plunger, but other than that, the show changes. And I'm doing, long story short, this year, this was the year that I was supposed to do what's called an A-level contract on Disney Cruise Line. I've been performing on Disney Cruise Line for the last 5 years, but this year was the year that I really sort of bumped up into what their sort of headliner status, and I was one of their go-to magicians. So I had what's called an A-level contract, which meant I was on for a week, off for a week, on for a week, and I was going to do 7 months, on for a week, off for a week, all through the West Coast cruises, basically the San Diego cruises, the Alaskan cruises, and then the San Diego cruises back again when they would go to the repositions. And I'll just tell you, it was a lot of money, and it was going to be a big deal. And then we did me and my wife, we did the repositioning cruise from New Orleans to San Diego, and in the middle of that cruise is when everything went down. So that's when, and we were supposed to hit all these ports, and the ports were not allowing the ships to go in. And so I was supposed to leave 5 days into the 14-day cruise, and we did the entire cruise because we could never get off the ship. And we finally got back to San Diego. And during that time, what would have sort of happened is that different acts would have been going back and forth. So there would always be new performers on the main show. And I did my main show on the first night of the cruise. And so during that, I do my main show. I do my adult show, what it's called. And an adult show on Disney is just as PG as anything else, but it's just for the older people. And so I do my adult show, and then I had like a workshop. And that's my contract. That's all I'm supposed to do. But because they couldn't get any other acts on, I ended up doing 9 shows. So 2 shows in the theater, 4 shows for the adults, 2 close-up shows, a workshop, and another thing for as a group thing for the little kids. And so because I was the only entertainer on board, there was 2 other groups, but one was not playing ball, and the other one was great, but the one other group was not playing ball. They didn't want to do anything. So I ended up doing it all. And the last show, we'd actually did a show in the theater, me and this dance troupe that were the other group, and these dancers, and we called it Disney's Bottom of the Barrel. And so we did a show, and it was great because literally I'm running through the ship going, all right, let me take this. I can build this here. Can I go down to this? Can I go down to the crew mess? And I'm literally grabbing pipes and stuff and building things in my cabin to create a show. And it was amazing. And Disney treated me very well after that. But the reason I bring this up is that as soon as we got back to land, everything else was closed. It had been closed for days. We were the last happiest place on earth. We were floating, and everything else in the world had closed, but we were still, basically interacting the way we normally would. We get off the ship. I had to go home, and I realized, what am I going to do? Because all that work is done. And, there was this, at that time, there was that belief that, we're just going to be closed for a month. I never bought that. So I knew that I had to do something. So I started taking that same ingenuity that made me run around a ship to build props, had made me run around my house to create a show that I could do online, a show that I could do for little kids online for birthday parties, because I needed to make money, and nothing is beneath me at this point. So little kids were to do a corporate show, a workshop, all these different type of things that I could do, a family show that was more, for a general family audience, a show that was more for adults. And I built all this stuff and tried to make it as creative as possible. And I'm essentially building the plane as it's taking off. And I'm already putting myself out there to do this. And so I was one of the first people in the market doing this. And I've been doing it now. And the show has definitely improved over the last 4 months that I'm doing it. But to say that this is something, I'm taking a lifetime of magic experience and putting it into a show that is basically 4 months old. And that's where all of this energy has been going into. And I don't know if you've noticed, but we've had a lot of time on our hands. So I've been able to actually put a lot of effort, a lot of research into this, and create a lot of, I feel, very interesting, engaging stuff. Sometimes you will see online, especially on Facebook, people put their shows online, and this is not what this is. This is not what I'm doing. They're just filming their show that they would normally do on stage, and that is literally like taking an IMAX camera and filming a stage play. It doesn't make any sense. Here, I am using this interactive medium of Zoom for its fullest extent. And I'm making sure that I'm delivering something that is not just about you watching me passively, but is about you engaging and interacting and doing something that you wouldn't get to do if you were watching a show on Netflix. And that's what I feel is the selling point of all of this, is the interactivity and how engaging it can be and how fun it can be, and that it's actually personal. And I can look at you at the same time that you can look at me, and I can say, oh, look, cool screen behind you there with the logo. Nice work on that. And I can play with the audience the same way that I'd play with a close-up audience. But unlike close-up, where you can, close-up loses it about, 2 rows back, and you can only put about maybe 20, 30 people around you. I could put 100, 200 people around me, and every one of them still feels like they get a close-up experience, even though I have a large group of people in the room. Zoom room. So there's a lot of advantages here. There's disadvantages, of course. The lack of me being able just to go here, pick a card, and being tactile is obviously a disadvantage. But there's so many really cool things that you can do with this. And I've been having honestly a blast learning about it, creating in the medium and then doing stuff that people didn't think was possible.
Well, and I imagine too for close-up, it's a lot. I mean, there are current opportunities for you, whereas say a stage magician who just has the props, or like the big boxes, there's not, unless they videotape an old show, there's not a lot of opportunities for them right now.
No, I mean, there are people who've taken to the medium and have done a really good job with it, and there's people who haven't, and I'm not going to name names, but I mean, like I feel like even if you are doing prop magic, there are definitely some people who are doing prop magic and doing it in a very good, engaging way with the audience in this medium that it works really well. And I'm not against props. Let me be very clear about that. I respect the heck about all that stuff. About 5 years ago, I went from being essentially a close-up card magician to a stand-up comedy magician, full time. Like all I was doing was ships and corporate events where I was doing stand-up material. And I still did card tricks, and I still did walk around when I would just do card tricks and do the card magic that I love. But my show became very varied with a lot of other different, really interesting ideas in it. And it was stuff that I'd always learned about and then applied to card magic, and then decided, hey, wait a minute, why don't I just stick with the original prop and see if I can come up with something else? And I've been doing a lot of really cool things. So like in the show that you'll see with you guys, there'll be some card magic in it for sure. The Tiny Plunger is a great example of that. It's a great interactive card piece. There's going to be lots of magic in it that have nothing to do with the deck of cards. And this will be fun pieces, again, with dice and with your phone and with numbers and with a mind-reading duck. I have a mind-reading duck that's going to be making an appearance in this show. So, I mean, like, it's trying to come up with something that appeals to everybody and makes them engaged and amazed and not think, well, okay, yet another card trick. I like the variety. I've become, I think my years of specialization in card magic made me really appreciate how to then add variety to everything. So if you're only using one prop, you have to have as much variety as you can with the one prop. So if I take that and then I apply that same principle to multiple props, multiple ideas, multiple concepts, then I get even more variety, get even more engagement. And I think it's one of the things that has made me translate my show very well over this medium, is that I've thought about this and I'm not just trying to film what I've always done.
Yeah. Well, and it's like you said, it's cool because you're not actually just performing to a camera. You are, but you actually have people there watching you live who you can interact with.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, when you ask them to think of a number, they can actually say a number. Whereas if you're just taping or filming whatever you're doing, just to play it back, there isn't that interaction. So it's like you said earlier, there is still a personal connection with this show.
Oh, absolutely. I feel everybody will get to have at least one, maybe not with an actual tactile object, but have at least one moment where something magical happened, not only to someone else on a screen, but to them.
Awesome.
They got to experience it.
Well, again, just as a reminder, it's Saturday, July 25th at 7 p.m. And you can get your tickets on Eventbrite or just go to our Facebook page. And Jon, thank you so much for taking the time. I certainly do appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
I know.
It's been a while for everybody. I haven't seen anybody live for a long time.
Last time I saw you, you were performing in the castle and you had this big group around you. And I just peeked in and I was like, oh, cool, Jon's performing. And then we turned and walked away and you said something like, leaving already, Chris? And I'm like, oh, shit, you saw me.
That sounds like me.
Anyway, thank you again. And we look forward to seeing you on the 25th.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris. Bye.